We are finally at the end of this read aloud. I can't believe it. So we're going to finish up today, chapter 76 through the end, which I think is chapter like 79 or 80, which is wild. We've been reading an 80 chapter book. I asked you guys last time if you thought Roz would stay on the island or if she would go back to the airship. So we are going to read on and find out what she does and why she does it. So here we go. Chapter 76, The Broken Robot. Geese and otters were bustling all around Roz. They were pulling arms and legs out from the robot pile and pressing them against her body. They were hoping to hear the thwip sound, that the robot's limbs would snap right in place, and Roz would return to her old self, and life on the island would go back to the new normal. But nothing happened. No matter what they did, the limbs wouldn't attach. Our robot's body was too badly damaged. "I'm sorry, Ma," said Bright Bill, his voice trembling. "I thought this would work." "It's okay, son," said Roz calmly. "I'm lucky I can still think, and I can still speak." The animals tried to smile at their poor friend, but they couldn't hide their sadness. Roz was a mangled wreck, and there was nothing they could do to fix her. The robot wanted to be strong for her son and friends. She wanted to ease their worried minds and tell them everything would be just fine. But Roz knew that everything would not be fine. She looked down at her body. It was broken. Then she looked up at the geese and the otters and said, "I'll need some help getting home." Chapter 77, The Meeting. Strong, nimble creatures carried Roz up the sea cliffs across the island. They carefully propped her up inside the nest and built a fire. Then they left the robot with her son. Roz and Brightbill sat there staring at the flames until the goose finally said, "Do you need anything, Ma?" "I could really use some new arms and legs." The robot chuckled at her own bad joke. "That isn't funny," cried the goose. "My mom is broken, and I don't know what to do." "I'm sorry for joking." Roz adjusted her voice in a more serious tone. "I know you want to fix me, but there's nothing anyone here can do." At these words, her son looked away. "Brightbill, I'm afraid we have some difficult decisions to make. I think you should arrange a meeting of our closest friends. We could use their advice." The goose disappeared out the door, and soon Roz's oldest and wisest friends were on their way. Loudwing was first to arrive. She limped into the lodge on her injured foot and sat close to her friend. Mr. Beaver appeared next, followed by Fink and Swooper. Then Tawny curled up on the floor. Mother Bear was too badly hurt to make the journey, so Nettle came in her place. She sat in the garden with her enormous head jutting through the doorway. Brightbill returned with Chit-Chat, who was nursing her burned tail. The last one to crawl in was Crag, the old turtle. Once everyone was there, the meeting began. It's amazing, right? How many friends, that Roz made along the way, all these animals coming out to support her. When we think back to the beginning, how she was just alone, and now she has this great community. The group talked all through the night. They discussed the Recos and what to do about Roz. They discussed how to keep the island safe. There were very different differences of opinion, and tempers flared. But by daybreak, the group had a plan of action. That morning, the dawn truce didn't take place in the Great Meadow. Instead, it took place in a small meadow by the foot of a mountain, in front of the airship. Weary animals quietly hobbled into the clearing. The only sounds came from a gurgling brook that wound through and passed right by our robot. Roz sat in the wet grass. She was leaning against a rock. She looked so sad and frail. However, she still had her thoughts and words, and for that moment, it was all she needed. "Good morning, animals of the island." Roz's voice filled the meadow. "I must look strange to you all, beaten up like this, but I still hope I sound like your old friend." Hundreds of heads nodded. "You fought bravely yesterday. You risked your lives defending me, and I am eternally grateful. But many of our friends are wounded. Some may not recover. And there is worse news. The last Reco told me that more of his kind will come to our island. They might already be on the move. And even if we defeat them, still more will come. And my makers will not rest until all of their property has been retrieved. They want the broken parts. They want me." The crowd was silent. But I care about this island far too much to put any more lives in danger. And so, my friends, I must leave. It's a big decision for her to make. Voices cried out, "Don't go, Roz. Next time we'll be prepared. We risked our lives. We want you to stay." "I hear you," the robot's voice cut through. "But look at me. My body is ruined. And the Recco said the only ones who could help me are my makers." "What if he lied?" howled a voice. "You can't trust those monsters." "You're right," said Roz. "He might have been. There may also be no hope for me. But there is a chance I have to take. Animals, you taught me to be wild. I want to be wild again. And so I must try to get the repairs I need. It is for the good of me and the island that I return to my makers." A calm settled over the crowd. They knew Roz was right. I would love, if we were together, to hear your feelings, your thoughts, your reactions to this part. She's decided to go. She thinks it's in the best interest. Do we think that the Recco was lying? Do you think she needs to get back to the makers? Will more come? Is this the best choice? I would love, love, love to hear your thoughts. So if you want to say them at the screen, I'll hope I can listen. All right. Chapter 78, The Farewell. Our robot had an army of animals at her command, and she asked them to bring every robot part back to the airship. Absolutely everything had to go. It was the only way to be sure that the Reccos would not come back to the island. The island animals had no trouble locating the remains of the robots from the robot gravesite. Retrieving those parts took a bit of effort, but they were up to the challenge. Teams of clever creatures returned with robot parts in different shapes and sizes. They returned and loaded all of the heavy bodies onto the ship until the entire island had been cleared. Even the tiniest scraps were collected. It was amazing what an army of animals can do. A light mist was falling when they heaved Roz through the ship's doorway. The setting detail, right? The rain, the mist coming down. We can picture a gray day. It's kind of a sad day on the island. So that makes sense knowing that Roz has to leave. Her head slowly turned to face the crowd of geese, beavers, owls, insects, foxes, raccoons, vultures, a moose, bears, opossums, fish, deer, otters, turtles, woodpeckers, squirrels, frogs, hares, on and on. Every animal on the island had come to give the robot a proper send-off. "Goodbye, you wild animals," Roz's voice echoed through the gray mist. The wild animals smiled, and then a few of them started to roar. Then more started to screech, and even more howling and chirping and grunting. Soon every creature was hollering goodbye to Roz. The chorus of voices grew louder and louder, shaking the robot's body, rattling the ship, booming across the islands and up into the clouds. And then their voices gradually went down to a silence. Bright Bill fluttered up to his mother's shoulder. "You understand why I must leave," said the robot. "I understand," sniffled the goose. "More Reccos could be headed here right now. I just don't know. There's so much I don't know. I think it's time I get us some answers." "Will I ever see you again?" said Bright Bill, wiping his eyes. "You are my son, and this is my home," said Roz. "I will do everything in my power to return." Bright Bill hugged his mother's worn face. "I love you, Mama." "I love you, son." The goose fluttered back to his flock. The robot took one last look at her home. The door hummed closed. So, right, it's really important. She's naming this as her home. This is where she feels, that she belongs. Chapter 79, The Departure. The airship's engines automatically fired up. Then the ship slowly floated above the island, turned to the south, and disappeared into the clouds. Chapter 80, The Sky. Here's where we end. Our story ends in the sky, where a robot was being whisked away from the only home she had ever known. As Roz sat in the airship, broken and alone, speeding toward a mysterious future, she looked back at her miraculous past. Reader, it must seem impossible that a robot changed so much. Maybe the Reccos were right. Maybe Roz really was defective, and some glitch in her programming had caused her to accidentally become a wild robot. Or maybe Roz was designed to think and learn and change. She simply had done those things better than anyone could have imagined. However it happened, Roz felt lucky to have lived an amazing life, and every moment had been recorded in her computer brain. Even the earliest memories were perfectly clear. She could still see the sun shining through that gash in her crate. She could hear the waves crashing against the shore. She could still smell the salt water and the pine trees. Would she ever see and hear and smell those things again? Would she ever climb a mountain or build a lodge or play with a goose? And not just a goose, her son. Brightbill had been Roz's son from the moment she picked up his egg. She had saved him, and then he saved her. He was the reason Roz had lived so well for so long. And if she wanted to continue living, if she wanted to be wild again, she needed to be with her family and her friends on the island. So as Roz raced through the sky, she began computing a plan. She would get the repairs she needed. She would escape from her new life. She would find her way back home. Remember that big fancy word? That's foreshadowing, because there is a second book in the series called The Wild Robot Escapes. So, if you're interested, maybe pick up that text. All right. Like we always end our book clubs, read alouds, there's usually kind of like this big overarching idea. So I'm going to focus on this last chapter for your final reading response. Now, because it's the end of the week, you don't have school tomorrow. I do, but you don't. Take a break. But you could use that time to add on to your reading response. So this one will be a paragraph, so it will be a little bit longer. And I will post that on Thursday, and you will have the weekend to take that on. Then starting on Monday, we'll start our new read aloud, which was voted in second. So we might be reading, if you remember, Franny K. So back to something a little bit kind of fun and quirky. All right. It's been so much fun. I hope you love The Wild Robot as much as I do. It's been fun reading it to you and getting to hear all about your thoughts on it through Padlet and through your emails and through our one-on-ones. All right, guys, I will talk to you soon. Have a fabulous weekend. Miss you always.